Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 109.
Matthew Disher here, host of the American Guns Podcast, one of the many great shows on the Selfdefense radio network. Now, if you don't want me to spread rumors about how you hate guns and freedom, you're going to have to listen to my show. It's what you got to do. So don't be that guy. Head over to AmericanGunsPodcast.com and check us out.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 109 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Show notes page for today's episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/109. And today's sponsor is Gift for Gun Nuts. Gift for Gun Nuts, where you get the great gift ideas for the hunting and shooting enthusiast on your holiday shopping list. Right now they're giving away a Henry 22 Classic, so head over to giftforgunnuts.com and enter to win. That ends on December 22nd, so don't wait. Head over there, giftforgunnuts.com, and get your entries. Today's show is also sponsored by Scott Shot. Whether you are taking class as a complete beginner or an experienced, highly competent shooter seeking an NRA instructor certification, Scott Shot classes are comfortable, friendly, and taught with a high instructor-to-student ratio. So head over to scottshot.com and check them out. Today's guest is Lt Col Grossman. You guys have been listening to the show for a while. More than half of the guests on my show have recommended either On Killing or On Combat, and Lt Col Grossman is the author of both of those books, and really excited to talk to him and learn more about how those books apply to defensive carry and what we can expect if we are involved in a defensive use of firearms. And now, here's Lt Col Grossman. Lt Col Grossman, welcome to the show.
Hello, James. Glad to be on board. And welcome to all the sheepdogs out there that are listening to this conversation here. I think we'll have some good stuff for your audience.
Great. So, Dave, you are the author of two books that are very frequently recommended by my guests, On Killing and On Combat. Would you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, On Killing is an important book, and the concept is important. People point some horrible crime. Oh, that proves they're all killers. No, that's an outlier. That's literally one in a million. You explain to me that 99.9% of our citizens will go a lifetime, never kill anybody, never try to. Divorce, infidelity, layoff, traffic accidents, and less than 1 in 1,000 of our citizens in a lifetime will ever kill anybody or ever try to. Inside most healthy members of our species, there appears to be pretty hardwired resistance against killing our own kind, with one major exception we'll talk about later. And healthy people have to be trained to kill. Sociopaths don't have that resistance. Healthy people have to be trained to kill. In World War II, we found out most of our troops wouldn't pull the trigger. It was a training flaw. We taught them to shoot at bullseyes. We have no known cases of any bullseyes ever attacking our troops. If you've been in the armed forces since the Korean War, you didn't shoot a bullseye, you shot a man-shaped silhouette. You hit the target drop, stimulus, response, like a pilot in a flight simulator, like a kid in a fire drill. Modern training makes killing a conditioned response. And oh, by the way, the video games are doing the exact same thing to our kids. And so that's the book in a nutshell. For those who fully prepare themselves, that book is not all that important. It's academic, it's useful, it's important. But what's really more important is the second book, On Combat. And there is one major exception to this resistance to killing. It's we are wired to die for our children. We are wired to fight for our family. In the Sandy Hook school massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, the first one to die was Principal Dawn Hoxbund. It's an unarmed female charging the killer. Right beside her was the counselor. Two unarmed women just charging this killer. What did they think they were going to be able to do? But the third one to die was teacher Victoria Soto blocking the door with her body. We talk about this resistance to killing, but But violence to protect our loved ones, violence to protect our children is what we're wired to do. And so there's this one major exception. After the massacre in the elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, Sandy Hook, editor of a major newspaper, sent me an email. She said, I read your book on killing. I'm going to write an editorial about how all of these people buying guns at the moment of truth are not going to be able to use them. If they do use it, they'll be psychologically destroyed based on your book. I said, ma'am, you need to reread the book. Of all the violence we could engage in, violence to protect our children is what we're wired to do. And of all the violence we could engage in, violence to protect our children is something we can live with. So with that one major exception, there appears to be this hardwired resistance in most people. And while we talk about the teachers for a minute, James, let me give an aside to your listeners I think you'll find of value. After the Parkland School massacre, and we got to call these massacres, they're not shootings. We can't use the word shooting for a criminal act. We can't call these mass murders shooters. Whenever you hear the phrase active shooter response, I want you to laugh at them and tell them we'd be real busy during deer season. We got an audience full of active shooters out there. The words have power. When you talk about homosexual versus gay, it changes the argument. When you talk about illegal alien versus undocumented immigrant, it changes the argument. Whether you talk about pro-abortion or pro-choice, it changes the argument. And as long as we let them use that word shooter to refer to the most horrible mass murders in history, the Sandy Hook shooter, the Virginia Tech shooter, then when we're shooters, we're condemned by own language. But after the massacre at that after the massacre in Parkland, Florida school, the president talked about arming teachers. And the media just hammered him like this is the weirdest, outlandish thing anybody could ever do. And the truth is just the opposite. I did a lot of work in Utah. Ever since Columbine, 19 years ago, virtually every school in Utah has had armed educators. It's the individual principal's call. There's 1 or 2 people in every school that ought to be carrying a gun. For almost 20 years, they've been doing this. 85% of all the counties in Ohio have some armed educators. Isn't that worth mentioning in the news? Isn't that worth talking about? We heard about that massacre in Santa Fe, Texas school. But at the time, did the media say 1 out of 5 schools in Texas have armed educators? And they think within the next year, it's going to be half of all schools in Texas will have armed educators. I trained a school in a major Midwestern liberal state. I trained their school district, and they were arming educators. The superintendent was retired spec ops. The elementary school principal was retired military police and a reserve cop. Come on, it's a no-brainer for them to be carrying. The only state in America that I know of that doesn't have armed educators is California. California had 2 school districts with armed educators, and this year, California passed the law to stop them from doing that. So empowering our teachers, given the tools to protect our children, is very doable. 85% of all counties in Ohio have some armed educators. It costs them nothing. It was the teacher's gun, the teacher's ammo. The training was donated. It's called FASTER, FASTER training. Great program. And so of all the violence we can engage in, one principal told me one time, she said, I will die for my children. She said, give me something beside my keys on my hand when that day comes. That haunts me. I will die for my children. Give me something beside my keys in my hand when that day comes. So that's on killing in a nutshell. But when we roll into on combat, this is what we need to know. Auditory exclusion, slow motion time. I think later in this interview, we can address what's going to happen in that life and death event. Both of my books, On Killing, On Combat, are on the Marine Corps Commandant's required reading list. After 17 years of war, required reading. But On Combat is required at the NCO level. It's the nuts and bolts of what's going to happen in that life and death event. 95% of all readers say, that On Combat's the more important book. The other 5% don't hurt my feelings. I'm glad they feel that way. But I think most of your readers would get most value from jumping immediately into On Combat and understanding the psychology of the battlefield, what happens to us in this life and death event, how to prepare ourselves, how to be a sheepdog. And we have our Sheepdog Kids book that came off of that. Just go online and look at the Sheepdogs by Grossman on Amazon. And then the Sheepdog Kids book takes that sheep, the wolf, the sheepdog model and makes it powerful and makes it available to everybody. It's deep, James. It's powerful. But it was mostly military and law enforcement sheepdogs. We mentioned civilians. We bring everybody under that umbrella. But a lot of people, I speak at the NRA every year. What about our civilian sheepdogs, Dave? So we wrote our second book, Why Mommy Carries a Gun. If anybody in the family is going to carry a gun, mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts or uncles, here's what we want the kids to know. Why Mommy Carries a Gun by Grossman. You find a gun, stop, don't touch, get an adult. 4 universal gun safety laws, a history of famous sheepdogs throughout our heritage. All of that's in the book, Why Mommy Carries a Gun. So on the baseline, there are 4 books we recommend to readers. Most important is On Combat. Rolling out of that is the Sheepdog Kids book. On Killing is of great value. And of course, Why Mommy Carries a Gun is of great value. But my latest book, my most recent book, is Assassination Generation. I gave a copy to the president in February. I was invited to the White House as part of the president's roundtable on violent video games. The new factor in the equation, I co-authored a book with Glenn Beck, New York Times bestseller, Control. All your listeners, New York Times bestseller, Glenn Beck, Control. I wrote about a third of the book. A lot of people handed the book. I think I wrote more of the book than he did. He gets his name on the front. That's how it works. And I'll tell you in person, Glenn Beck is just a heck of a good guy. But Glenn Beck, for Control, the first 2/3 of the book say it's not about the guns. The guns have always been there. In 1968, any kid in America could order a gun from the Montgomery Ward's catalog and the U.S. mail would deliver it to their house. A 9-year-old could order a gun from the Montgomery Ward's catalog and the U.S. mail would deliver it to their house. The guns are not new. We're doing a better job of locking up our guns. We're going to keep doing a better job. High-capacity military weapons. What about an M1 carbine? Hundreds of thousands of M1 carbines flooded America after World War II. You could buy M1 carbines for $20 each. How many M1s would you buy for $20 each? That's not new. We're double-stack high-capacity 9mm pistol. What about a Browning high-power? Came out in the 1930s. Tens of thousands in America. The guns are not new. We're doing a better job of locking up the guns. The last third of the book, Glenn Beck's book, Control, the last third of the book, if it's not about the guns didn't change, we changed. It's the sick movies and the sick video games and the sick TV shows are creating sick kids. Read Glenn Beck's book, Control. Every gun owner should have a copy. Every gun store should have a stack of them. Hand one out with every book. But following along that line is my book, Assassination Generation. The one thing all these killers had in common, the president talked about it at his roundtable on violent video games, they were video gamers. Every single one of these killers were obsessed with violent video games. The Parkland killer, 17 dead. The neighbor said he spent 15 hours a day playing violent video games. 15 hours a day, kill. Isn't that worth mentioning in the news? Everybody knows the kind of gun he uses. Does anybody know the training? Does anybody know the all-consuming, all-pervasive thing in this killer's life was video games? So that's my latest book, Assassination Generation, and then the Glenn Beck book. By the way, Glenn Beck book, New York Times bestseller, not one single review. You can attack the New York Times bestseller. You can review it. The one thing you cannot morally do is completely ignore a New York Times bestseller. What the media doesn't report, the fact that the Parkland killer trained on video games, what the media doesn't report, a New York Times bestseller pointing the finger back at them. They will censor any information that points the finger back at them. The commercials are worth billions of dollars because they influence our behavior. What's in between the commercials has no impact on our society. That's their lie, and they're sticking with it. So that's On Killing, On Combat, the follow-on book, Control, Glenn Beck, Assassination Generation, the Sheepdog Kids books. They really are a tool that I would commend to all of our readers out there, but start with On Combat. And we'll talk later on. I think you want to talk about auditory exclusion, slow motion time, what's going to happen in that life and death event.
I would. Thank you. Yeah. So a lot of my listeners carry firearms for self-defense, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what to expect if they have to use their firearm in a defensive situation. What happens to them psychologically, physiologically, and is there something they can do to train for it?
All right. Now, first and foremost is forewarned is forearmed. When these things happen to you, you're not stunned by them. I've got case after case. People said, you told us what was going to happen. It was just like you said. It was no big deal. But let's begin with auditory exclusion. Hunters know that you fire your hunting rifle out on the range. You're without hearing protection, use a ring. Go to shoot a deer, what do you hear? Most people hear nothing. Some people hear pop, and your ears don't ring. By the way, hunters, you are still getting hearing loss. The shutout is in the nerve. The ears are still being hammered. Wear hearing protection when you hunt. You be a deaf old geezer like me, that's a pain in the butt. But folks see the auditory exclusion, the fact that the shots are muted. You might hear the brass hit the ground behind you and loud. You might hear the racking of the weapon. It's all loud, but the gunshots are muted. And then what happens is tunnel vision. Now, this is terribly important. People talk about looking through a toilet paper tube. Some people talk about looking through a soda straw. The bad guy has tunnel vision too. And lateral movement can take you right off his radar screen. Every draw should have a sidestep built into it. To not sidestep when you draw should be the exception. Every draw should have a sidestep built into it. That sidestep can very possibly take you right off his radar screen. In combat, movement is life. Lateral movement, sidesteps are essential. So we got tunnel vision, and we got slow motion time. And I've had hundreds of people tell me they can see the bullet in combat, and I believe them. On several occasions, they could walk up and point to where the bullet hit. There's no way they could have done it. They weren't tracking with their eyes like they said they were. It's like airsoft, where it's slow enough you track your eyes, and I believe them. Then we got memory gaps, and that's terribly important. 2016 was the single worst year-over-year increase in cops murdered in the history of our nation. Every year, cops have better training, better tactics, better medical technology, better equipment. The only good assessment of the problem is the year-over-year increase in the murder rate or the year-over-year increase in cops murdered. And in 2016, we had the single worst year-over-year increase in cops murdered in the history of our nation. 5 cops murdered in Dallas, 4 cops murdered in Baton Rouge, onesies and twosies across America. The media's hate campaign on our cops, it's just this twisted misrepresentation of our police has created this dynamic of empowering the cop killers out there. But we also had people come to the cops' house to murder their families. And again, Mama Bear, protect our cubs, most dangerous thing on the planet. And Mama Bear put a load of double-aught buck in this guy's face, game over. We tell people we carry a pistol around because a rifle's a pain in the butt and hard to conceal. When you're home, you get the home court advantage. You get to pick the weapon you use. You're a bird hunter, some version of trusty bird gun with smaller shot that won't punch through the walls and kill people 2 blocks down. If you're a deer hunter, some version of trusty deer gun. If you've been in the military or if you sought training, the AR platform is the best tool we have out there. The 5.56 caliber is minimal overpenetration of wall boards. It's a great tool to use. And she was a bird hunter. She used the bird gun. Game over. But she told me, she said, I was messed up. And she said, you know what bothered me the most? She said, I heard the audio recording of my 911 call. And to this day, I have no memory of making that call. And then she said, somebody gave me your book on combat. They said, look, it's in the book. It's normal. The most healing words on the planet. It's normal. But it's so much better to give them this ahead of time. To know those memory gaps are normal and memory distortions. 1 out of 5 cops just flat remember something that did not happen. Usually little things. But folks, I remember something did not happen. Well, what do we call that? In other words, that's hallucinations. Early in the war, one of my tier 1 spec ops medics back from his first combat tour said, why did the wounded hallucinate so much? So here's the point. Now, this is important. Half of all cops had memory gaps. 1 out of 5 had memory distortions. Just flat remember something that did not happen. In the state of Texas, they passed a law that the cop has the right to see every video before he makes a written statement. If he doesn't see those videos, his memory gaps, his memory distortions, then he got to live with those videos in court. People say, oh, you lied on your first statement. No, he didn't. But here's the point for us. If trained, seasoned cops could have memory gaps, if trained, seasoned cops could have memory distortions, how much more so could it happen to the individual homeowner or the person who's protecting his family or her family? How much more so with us? What we tell cops is you don't make a statement until you see the videos. And you make the initial statement, I was in fear for my life, I need to talk to my attorney. We tell cops that. How much more so for us? What I tell people is after that life and death event, this is not the time to be shooting your mouth off. I was in fear for my life. Here's my weapon. Here's his weapon. I want to get my attorney. And I'd like to be sent to the hospital to be checked for any medical damage that was done to me. And trained seasoned cops, their union attorney shows up immediately and says he's made his initial statement. You'll get no further statement from us until further down the road. If cops can do that, how much more for us? So I understand that when we realize these things are coming, that they won't blindside us. We can be ready for those things. But even more important is be warned about what happens afterwards. We expect crazy things in the heat of battle. When crazy things happen afterwards, it can mess you up unless you've been warned. So I tell people, when you were a kid, how many times do you have to touch a hot stove? Kid, hot stove, how many times? Once, just once. You touch that hot stove, whoa, your heart rate skyrockets, and a powerful neural pathway is established. We got two brains, the human brain and the dog brain, laid on top of each other. And the dog brain, the puppy, the fight or flight instinct, punches through the screen door, grabs you by the throat, pees in your lap, said, don't ever touch that stove again. It works. It's called one trial learning. Whenever there's fear and pain associated with learning, a powerful neural network can be established, a network of neurons. If a neural network could be established from touching a hot stove, how much more so from combat, from that life and death event? So we've got, I had an Arkansas State Trooper, first gunfight, bad guy's down, he's alive. Happy ending to the story. He said, a week after my first gunfight, I'm sitting up in the bleachers with my wife, watching our daughter at a swim meet. And the starter's gun goes off when he didn't expect it. Boom! His heart is pounding, he's gasping for air, he's drenched with sweat. His wife thought he was having a heart attack. It's not a heart attack, it's a panic attack. A little milder anxiety attack, basically the same thing. The puppy's coming for a visit. And that is normal. It is not PTSD. It can become PTSD. If the puppy comes for a visit, it scares the daylights out of you, and you try to not think about it. You will literally drive yourself crazy trying to not think about it. You got to separate the memory from the emotions. And the path to healing is to remember it without reliving it. And there's many ways we use for that. The breathing exercise, take a swig of water, EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprogramming. We're very good at treating PTSD. And most people come out the other end stronger for the experience. So that's kind of on combat in a nutshell, being forewarned and forearmed, the puppy coming for a visit. Once you've been warned that puppy might come for a visit, it's no big deal. And we stop, take a breath, have a swig of water, regain control, and keep on from there. So that's the essence of it. Also, when on combat is the spiritual side of the equation. The Bible says, "You shall not murder." All the translations of the commandments, all the Jewish translations of 10 Commandments, originally in Hebrew, translate "shall not murder." There's all the difference in the world between lawful use of deadly force and murder. And we go through that in detail. We talk about other factors and on combat. All of those are things that every sheepdog needs to know as your starting point, and then roll out from there to the other books and the other resources. But remember, trained, seasoned cops in Texas are required by law, allowed by law to see every video of the incident before they do their statement. How much more so should we apply that to us? When the puppy comes for a visit, a loud noise goes off, your heart is pounding, that is not PTSD. Use your breathing, take a big swig of water, regain control. If you can't regain control by yourself, don't hesitate to get help and have faith that the help can help. When we talk about treating PTSD, I was on a podcast a while back with Marcus Luttrell, lone survivor. Most people remember the movie, a SEAL team member, his entire team wiped out, illness survivor, captured, tortured. And I was on his podcast, Team Never Quit, a while back. And I got his permission to talk about him. Across all these years, I couldn't talk about Marcus Luttrell. Now I can. I trained Marcus Luttrell's team before and after the lone survivor incident. Now, post-traumatic stress is like being overweight. Post-traumatic stress disorder is like being obese. We all know the difference between overweight and obese. Post-traumatic stress is overweight. It'll become post-traumatic growth and you'll move on. Post-traumatic stress disorder is like being obese. You can recover from it and move on. But Marcus Luttrell's doc told me he came back with that incident and he was 500 pounds PTSD. totally debilitated. A year later, he was 50 pounds PTSD. He wanted to deploy into this unit, and he did, and it was a good thing. And I said to him at the time, I said, look how far you've come in just the last year. Have confidence you can come farther. Today, Marcus Luttrell tells us he is 100% post-traumatic stress-free and stronger from the experience. If that man come out the other end free of post-traumatic stress, anyone can. You know, I trained a major SWAT team a while back. During the break, they came up and said, hey, Colonel, the doc psyched this guy off the team. Now doc says he's okay. Can we trust him? Yes, you can trust him. He's stronger for the experience. We're good at treating PTSD. He's got a piece of paper says he's sane. You got one of those? So that's On Combat in a nutshell. It's a critical resource for all of our sheepdogs out there. And then roll out of there the Sheepdog Kids book, Why Mommy Carries a Gun, Assassination Generation, On Killing. I think you'll find those have enormous value. And I'm proud to be able to I'm proud to know that people contacted you and talked to you as that being a critical resource for them.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned there that this is the gentleman that you trained before he went into combat, and then after. Even with all that training, and obviously that was an incredible experience that he survived, but even with the training, he still came out with PTSD. Is there, if that happens to such a highly trained individual, is there hope for us as civilians to coming out of a self-defense scenario without post-traumatic disorder?
Absolutely. And that's what the book on combat is about. And that was why Marcus Luttrell, you can think of it as having taken a tremendous blow. A year later, he's recovered from it. And then a couple years later, he's totally recovered from it. He's an extreme case. He's an extreme example. In World War II, we had 100,000 Section 8 psych discharges, enough to man 10 divisions. They were literally, their mind was the weak link. They were Section 8 psych discharges. Anybody remember the movie Patton, or that scene where the general slaps a guy in the hospital? It represents your incredible frustration. 100,000 trained, armed, equipped. What's it cost to train, deploy, equip 100,000 people? Gone because their mind was weak link. But we had over 10 million Americans in the war. 100,000 is less than 1% of the troops we had in that war. So recognize the fact that these things do happen. The vast majority come out stronger. Even the ones who have extreme circumstance, torture, your entire team wiped out, captured. Even with extreme circumstance, we can come out the other end a year later with our feet on the ground, and then a couple of years after that, completely free of post-traumatic stress. And the most important way to be able to go in that life and death event and not get PTSD is my book on combat. That's why it's required reading. It's issued in the DEA Academy, issued in the Marshals Academy. But there are extreme circumstances that even the best training on the planet won't completely guarantee, and that's all right. We can heal, we can recover from that. So what I talk about is a balancing act of no pity party, no macho man. Go on that life and death event, believe it'll make you stronger. A lot of garbage about post-traumatic stress in our troops. You can go to the Veterans Administration website, look up PTSD in Iraq and Afghanistan. 16% of the troops deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan have PTSD. 11% of the ones who didn't deploy have PTSD. About 5% of our troops contracted PTSD. The British studied their troops in Afghanistan, 5%. The Dutch studied their troops in Afghanistan, 5%. I keep running to veterans who think there's something wrong with them because there's nothing wrong with them. But even in that 5%, we're really good at treating it and getting them better. Now, we got 3 million Americans in the war. 5% of 3 million people is a lot of people, but keep it in perspective. They need our help. We'll be there for them. We'll make them stronger. But no pity party. Go on that life and death event. Believe it'll make you stronger. You will come out the other end stronger from the experience. You will be the veteran. You'll be better equipped for future events. When we talk about the World War II generation, we call them the greatest generation. And a new greatest generation rising up in these violent times. And have faith in that. No pity party. Believe that life and death event will make you stronger. But no macho man, no macho gal. If there is a problem, deal with it. And have faith that help can help. Now, if you can't at least stand that puppy by yourself, don't hesitate to get help. And flee from anybody that says PTSD is untreatable. It's a total lie. It is completely a lie. I present at national, international psych conferences. I say, how many people in this room? I got every flavor of shrink. How many people in this room? I personally know of cases where PTSD has been treated and recovered fully. Most of the hands go up. Everybody, their hands up, poking a finger in the eye of the lion dog that says PTSD is for life. So that balancing act, no pity party. Believe that life and death event will make you stronger. But no macho man, no macho gal. If there's a problem, deal with it, get help, and have faith the help can help. So that's kind of the baseline dynamic on helping people through these events that we cover in the book on combat.
Thank you. And the last question I wanted to ask you was about the reluctance people have to kill, and you answered most of it in the beginning. But for people carrying for self-defense, you mentioned that there's an exception to that reluctance when defending your children. Does that also extend to defending yourself, or do people still experience that reluctance if it's a self-defense scenario where it's just them involved?
I'm a huge fan of the Well-Armed Woman, TWAW, TWAW, the Well-Armed Woman. I was a keynote speaker at the national conference. I run into woman after woman says, I will die for my children. But I think I'd have trouble killing somebody to protect myself. And I tell them that your life is every bit as valuable as any other life. You have to make a mental decision right now that your life is worth every bit as much as your children's life. You're not going to let somebody steal your children's mother. You're not going to let them steal their family. And confront that dynamic right now. But the way we overcome that resistance is with training. Photorealistic targets, simulators. Seek the simulators. Go out there and use simulators whenever you can. Photorealistic targets. And Cabela's and Bass Pro and others now have a range involved, and they have the simulators, and you go to the range and you shoot photorealistic targets. There's a federal, in my book on combat, I talk about there's a federal Supreme Court decision that says cops are negligent if they shoot anything other than a clear depiction of a deadly force threat. I got law enforcement trainers out there, got the man-shaped silhouette, and they spray paint a gun in their hand. They've got a silhouette of a gun, and they spray paint it on every one of those targets because they said we don't shoot blank targets, we don't shoot bullseyes, we shoot deadly force threats. And so it's a training dynamic, and a little bit of training can easily overcome it. Those who've been in the military have rehearsed shooting at man-shaped silhouettes. With our military now is tremendous simulators, but understand the same thing is being done in the video game to our children. England has had this horrendous explosion of knife murders. They banned guns, and now they're trying to ban knives. They got chefs saying there's no reason why a knife should be over 3 inches long. There's no culinary reason why any knife should have a point to it. What are they going to ban next? They ban guns, they ban sticks, rocks. And the point is that they can't even succeed in banning guns. England has confiscated every gun. They're an island nation with complete control of their borders, and England can't stop criminals from getting guns. No way on earth anybody in America is going to stop people from getting guns. Look at it's a Business Insider, 20 most homicidal countries in the world. Now, the one I use is a snapshot of 2014, UN World Health Organization, and the 20 most violent nations on the planet all have gun control. But when we disarm our citizens, all we have is the mass murder of citizens, the slaughter of helpless individuals. We can look around the planet at the 20 most violent nations on the planet. Look what happened in France. They're not one of the 20 most violent nations, but how do those gun laws work out for France? Russia is a totalitarian nation that has confiscated every gun for 100 years. And Russia had a multiple homicide by a juvenile in the school in Moscow. Last month, 20 people were murdered in a college in Russia. Did they get in the media? Russia. 20 dead in a college in Russia. Ain't that worth mentioning? But the media story, it's only happened in America. Last April of this year, in China, a man came out of middle school with a knife and murdered 9 children. 9 dead with a knife in China. Now, why isn't that in the news? Google it. You'll find it. That's just why wasn't that in the headlines? Because the media is telling us 2 lies. Number 1, it's only happened in America. Number 2 is because of our evil guns. And they will not point the camera back at themselves. The things that they censored should enrage us. Just look for a knife massacre in China, 9 dead, April of this year. Look at the massacres that happened in France. in that theater massacre and other massacres. And while all those things were happening, the director of Interpol said, you've got to ask yourself, could these crimes have happened in Dallas? Italy, right now, we got a conservative leader that just took over Italy, and the first thing he's doing is arming his citizens and empowering his citizens. It gives you great cause for hope. The answer to the problem is not take away rights, it's give them more rights, give them the right to protect their loved ones, give them the right to protect their children. So the dynamic around the world is empowering people with the tools to protect themselves and then seeking the training that allows you to use that weapon effectively. And oh, by the way, the same thing's happening to the children with the video games. This horrendous explosion of violence, it's not about what's in their hand. England partially successfully banned guns, and now they got knife massacres. We got 9 dead with a knife in a middle school in China. It's not about what's in their hand. It's about what's in their head. And the video games are training a generation of mass murderers. And in the meanwhile, as we address these violent times, we need to make sure that we're trained. Seek that simulator, seek those photorealistic targets, mentally prepare yourself your moment of truth, and you'll be equipped and prepared to protect your loved ones. The lady who said, I read your book on combat, on killing, and I'm going to write an editorial about all those people and bought a gun, won't be able to use it, will be destroyed when they do. I said, ma'am, you got to reread the book. And we can wrap up this by saying, go to the NRA, the National Rifle Association website, and look up the armed citizen. Month after month after month, we've got example after example of citizens successfully using firearms to protect themselves and others. So don't get trapped in that pity party, but don't get trapped in the macho man. Find that middle ground, seek that training, and have confidence. If you have the tools and you have the training, at the moment of truth, you will protect your loved ones and you will make our world a better and stronger place. A free nation revolves around having armed citizens. I'm a one-issue voter. There's only one thing that matters. Do you believe that I'm an adult? Do you believe that I'm a citizen who has the skill and the sense to protect myself and others? Or do you believe that I'm a child that has to be disarmed? Around the planet, if you're wealthy, if you're a politician, anywhere on the planet, you have armed security. But the peons, the peasants, never have that right. In America, there is no elite class. I am my family's Secret Service. My family deserves every bit as much protection as the president's family does. I am my family's Secret Service. And there are only one or two only a handful of truly free nations on the planet. America, Israel, Switzerland, others that are moving in that direction. There's only a small handful of truly free nations on the planet. And when it comes time to vote, there's one issue we should pay attention to. The ultimate decision of whether or not we're free people is whether or not we have the tools to protect ourselves.
Colonel, thank you so much. I'll put links to your books on the show notes page. Any websites or social media accounts I should link to as well?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, James. Number one is my website, killology.com. We've got all my books linked there. We also have sheepdogknifeandgun.com. Just so all the way up, sheepdogknifeandgun.com. My son is a master gunsmith, lives right next door. He's got 9 patents to his name. We're knocking out some world-class 1911s, this world-class custom guns at a really good price. We're also putting our enhanced slide pulls and our trigger finger index point in place. See the website, sheepdogknifeandgun.com. Our store is linked there at sdkng.com. And our training classes, we're doing sheepdog training. Look up sheepdogseminars.com and come and catch our training. It's focused on house of worship safety, but it also revolves around what keeps your church safe, keeps your school safe, keeps your home safe, keeps your business safe. And check out sheepdogseminars.com and come to those seminars and get the full spectrum of training and resources that we can give to you to empower you and equip you at your moment of truth.
Well, Colonel, thank you so much for being on the show. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
My pleasure, James. God bless, and thanks to all of your sheepdogs out there, your weapon-carrying Americans who are making our part of the world a safer and better place. God bless, and God bless America.
Thanks again for tuning in to episode 109 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Show notes page for today's episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/109. Please remember our sponsors, Scott Shot. Whether you are taking a class as a complete beginner or as an experienced, highly competent shooter seeking an NRA instructor certification, Scott Shot classes are comfortable, friendly, and taught with a high instructor-to-student ratio. So head over to scottshot.com and check them out. And please remember to visit giftforgunnuts.com, giftforgunnuts.com, where you get great hunting and shooting gift ideas for the hunting and shooter on your holiday shopping list. And they're also giving away a Henry Classic 22, so head over to giftforgunnuts.com and check them out.